The night my family toasted my sister's future, I learned what mine would cost. We were gathered in our dining room in Riverbend, the same room where birthdays were sung off-key and school trophies were lined up like proof that love could be measured. The good china caught the warm light, and the knife in my father's hand moved through the roast chicken with the quiet authority of a verdict. My mother passed the salad, smiling in the way nurses do when they've already decided how to deliver difficult news. Across from me, my sister Tessa, glowed hair tucked behind one ear, pastel dress, a little breathless from talking about her new program and the lab she hoped to join. I nodded at all the right moments. I even laughed once. Practiced daughter flawless performance. When there was finally a pause, I set my water down and told them about the thing that kept me awake at night. I spoke softly, carefully, as if the idea might break in my hands if I squeezed too hard. "It's called Claim Key," I said. "It helps people fight medical bills they shouldn't have to pay. We can translate the codes, track appeals, generate letters." My father's fork stilled midair. The look over his glasses was familiar, as old as my first report card. "Mara," he said, and the name felt like a warning. "Dreams don't pay rent. You have a good job. Be smart." The words landed like snow on pavement, silent, deliberate, cold when they finally melted through. I swallowed and folded the corner of my napkin until it made a sharp little triangle. My mother reached across the table, touched my wrist with the kind of tenderness that makes a refusal hurt worse. "Honey, you're so independent. We're proud of that. But stability matters. Independent. In our house, it was a compliment with a locked door behind it. It was why no one came to my debate finals, why the gifts were practical, why I learned to applaud from the edges of every photograph. Tessa sweet, even when she didn't have to be glanced at me with an apology she didn't owe. She couldn't help being the one they invested in. She couldn't help being the proof. "Let's toast," my father said, lifting his glass. "To Tessa's new place, to beginnings." I lifted mine too. "To beginnings," I echoed, and felt the lie dissolve on my tongue. After dinner, I slipped into the hallway where the family photos leaned in their frames. In each one, Tessa stood between our parents, sunlit and sure. I was always a step to the side, shoulder turned easy to crop. Back in the guest room, I packed quietly jeans, 2 sweaters, my laptop, a notebook with dog-eared pages and coffee ring moons. On the pillow, I left a note the length of a breath. "Thank you for teaching me independence." I slept poorly. When the morning came, it came hard. White-gray sky air sharp enough to make my eyes water. I drove toward the city on a road I knew by muscle memory and pain, and then I saw it. Larchmont Tower's glass bright as a promise, a small crowd at the entrance. Tessa stood in a soft dress with the sun glinting off a pair of ceremonial scissors. A red ribbon stretched across the doorway like a vein. My parents flanked her, all pride and open body language, as if the building itself had stepped forward to hug them. I pulled to the curb and watched through the windshield. The glass threw their faces back at me in faint, distorted shapes. Tessa cut. The ribbon fell halves, flaring before they drifted down. Applause broke open like rain. Something inside me quieted. Not broke, just quieted. The ache that had kept me still shifted into something clean and precise. A line I could finally see. The gold of my watch caught the sun. I felt my fingers tighten on the steering wheel and then loosen. If no one was going to hand me a ribbon, I would learn how to cut my own doors open. I put the car in drive. The city waited unsentimental, exactly what I needed. I left Riverbend that night before anyone woke. The street was still glazed with the memory of dinner, garlic rain, and disappointment. My car smelled like old paper and ambition. The back seat was stacked with boxes labeled Office, Dreams, Do Not Break. The drive toward the city felt like stepping out of a photograph that no longer included me. Chicago's skyline rose slow from the fog, indifferent and vast. I should have been scared. Instead, I felt hollow in a way that made space for something else resolve. Growing up, independence was my family's favorite word for me. When I was 12, it meant walking myself to school while they drove Tessa to violin lessons. At 16, it meant working weekends so I could afford my own car. At 21, it meant moving out the same week Tessa graduated, summa cum laude. Yet every time they said, "You've always been so independent," what they really meant was, "We don't worry about you because we don't have to." I used to wear that word like armor. Now it felt like distance. As I packed the last of my things, my mother had stood at the doorway, fingers curled around her coffee mug, like it could hold back the conversation. "We love you, Mara," she said. "Just be realistic." Realistic. The word hung between us like second-hand smoke. I nodded, said, "Of course," and lied beautifully. That night in my tiny sublet, I opened my laptop. The glow washed over my face as if it could baptize me into something new. I wrote a single email subject line: Claim key, redefining fairness. It wasn't a pitch. Not yet. It was a promise. When I couldn't sleep, I opened the bottom drawer of my desk and found a photo I hadn't meant to pack me and Tessa at a science fair. She's holding a blue ribbon. I'm holding a participation certificate. Our smiles were identical, except mine didn't reach my eyes. I flipped the photo over and wrote, "For the record, this time I'm the one keeping the ribbon." At dawn, the sky outside my window bruised from gray to pale gold. I wrote a note to my parents I'd never send. "Thank you for teaching me to survive. Now I'll learn to live." I sealed it in an envelope and tucked it under my keyboard. Somewhere between exhaustion and defiance, I realized that leaving home wasn't rebellion, it was arithmetic. Subtract expectation, add silence, multiply effort and hope. The sum equals something that looks like freedom. When I closed my eyes, I saw the ribbon again, red and glinting in the sun. That morning, it had meant I didn't belong. Tonight, it meant I was finally free to find out who I could become without their permission. The apartment smelled like damp soil and fading roses. It sat above a florist shop on a narrow corner of Albany Park, one of those Chicago neighborhoods that carried the echo of every language except silence. When I moved in, the landlord warned, "The pipes moan when it rains." I told him I didn't mind. I'd learned to live with noise. The space was barely 200 square feet. A single window overlooked the alley, the kind where city light arrives like an afterthought. I spread out my laptop, a second-hand desk lamp, and a coffee maker that sputtered like it had opinions. The hum of the flower fridge downstairs became the pulse of my nights. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Independence in square footage and rent due on the 1st. By day, I worked at Bluefinch Cafe, the kind of place where customers ordered oat milk lattes while typing manifestos they'd never finish. I liked the rhythm, steam pour, smile repeat. It gave me time to think, to collect fragments of courage for the hours after closing, when Claim Key became more than an idea. That's how I met Jules Park and Ravi Patel. Jules was the cafe's unofficial philosopher, 30 Korean-American sharp eyes, black pixie cut. She'd studied UX design and claimed she could read websites the way therapists read trauma. Ravi was quieter, a South Asian engineer with soft manners and stubborn focus. The three of us bonded over burnout and bad espresso. When I showed them my prototype, they didn't laugh. They leaned closer. "So this breaks down medical codes?" Jules asked. "Translates them for patients." "Exactly," I said. "Makes it human again." Ravi frowned thoughtfully. "It'll need a back end strong enough to fight billing algorithms. Can you build it?" He smiled for the first time. "Let's find out." Nights turned into collaboration marathons, laptops glowing cold pizza boxes, stacked like architectural drafts. Jules mapped user flows while I wrote copy lines like prayers. No one should drown in numbers while they're healing. We weren't saving the world, but we were learning how to swim against it. Then came the picture. A notification blinked from the family group chat. Tessa's condo launch. So proud. I opened it. There she was. Tessa, all sunshine and confidence, cutting another red ribbon in front of her new condo, parents smiling at her sides. The same symbol that had started this fire. The cafe's Wi-Fi flickered as I stared at the photo. For a moment, the noise of the flower fridge below felt deafening. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just saved the image, renamed it Motivation JPG, and placed it on my desktop beside the Claim Key logo. That night, I typed a sentence in the project's mission file. To build something worth more than any ribbon they'll ever cut. The next morning, I quit my cafe job. My manager blinked. "You sure I'm finally sure about something?" I said, wiping my hands on my apron for the last time. The walk home felt like stepping off a cliff and realizing the fall was actually flight. From the window of my tiny apartment, I watched the first snow dust the streetlights and thought, if dreams don't pay rent, then I'll make mine pay dividends. The first time I saw Donovan Pierce, he ordered black coffee in silence. No sugar, no cream, no small talk. Just a man in a tailored charcoal suit sitting at the far end of the cafe, reading financial reports like they were love letters. He came in every Thursday at exactly 8:15. The regulars called him the Economist. To me, he looked like a closed door with expensive hinges. I was behind the counter that morning, filling in for a friend. The espresso machine hissed like an impatient animal. He raised his eyes briefly when I handed him the cup, and for a moment I felt examined like he was taking inventory of something invisible. "You look like you have 2 jobs, he said, finally. Voice calm, almost clinical. "I do," I replied, not looking away. "One pays bills, one might pay the world back." That made him pause. He set his coffee down. "That sounds expensive. Only if I fail." A small smile curved at the edge of his lips. "And what's the currency?" "Belief," I said. He left a $20 bill for a $3 coffee and a business card on the counter. Donovan Pierce, Harborline Capital. Beneath it, handwritten in blue ink. "Email me your plan. Let's see if your pain can turn into process." That night I did.